Week 18 is complete, and we're now going to go through the Week 18 games. The next video, I will share kind of a preview of the wild card in more depth. So starting out, again, some of these games were just garbage games. The Titans do come away with the victory over the Saints, so they come up 7-10 on the year, and so do the Saints. Nothing spectacular about this game except for LaDainian Tomlinson gets 117 yards in likely his last game of his career. He's, I think, 33 years old. Maybe he comes back, but I'm doubtful on his return. But his injuries and everything just lead to a kind of a end of his career. We see both David Wilson, the rookie, and Jonathan Stewart almost getting 100 yards each. Big rushing game for the Titans, but this game had no impact. Then you have the Colts versus the Texans. They're both 10-6, both wanting to win this game in order to get the home field advantage next week in the wild card, in which they will be facing each other. Jackson, mild game for him, 87 yards for Spiller with 2 TDs. The Colts are without Chris Johnson for the remainder of the playoffs, and they definitely needed him for this game. Texans win 24-10. We'll see how this rematch goes in the wild card. Then you've got a very tight game here. Giants trying any chance they can to make the playoffs. They are outside looking in. They need the Panthers to lose. So they have a 35-34 game here. So Dallas Cowboys fans can rejoice to the fact that they don't have to go 7-10 again, because they've been 7-10 the past 4 or 5 years. Now they are 6-11. So Russell Wilson, 333 yards, 5 touchdowns. Wilson ending this season very strong, despite the fact that they have a worse record now than they did before. Wilson's start of the year was bad. Now he is kind of having that retribution of the second half. So Mike Shanahan looking pretty smart for picking him. But with that said, I mean, Ryan Matthews, 121 yards, and Carson Palmer's performance was good enough to squeak by a victory against the Cowboys to go 9-8, above 500. Now this is an 8-8 team for the Dolphins trying to stay in the playoffs. If they lose and Pittsburgh wins, then Pittsburgh takes the 7th seed. And the Eagles are trying to get the first number 1 seed in the NFC. And the Eagles did it. And they just blew them out. It was just Eagles after Eagles, big play after big play. McNabb, 224 yards, 4 TDs. We see 70 yards by Larry Johnson. What happened was I had my starters in, and as you see Case Keenum in there. Case Keenum in his debut fumbles twice. I mean, basically gave the Dolphins an opportunity to get some stats back. But with this game, Cam Newton, who led the Dolphins to the Super Bowl in his rookie year, likely is missing the playoffs now. Then we have the Buffalo Bills taking on the Bengals. Another meaningless game. Osweiler in his second career start loses again. Osweiler not looking as great here in his debut. We'll see if the Bengals decide to build around him, if they stick with Brodie Croyle. John Harbaugh has some decisions to make. Maybe they draft somebody. 2013 is not a good QB draft class, or really a good draft class at all. You see Tyler Thigpen getting his first career start ever. Put him in over Ponder, and he gets the win. I mean, for what it's worth. Kareem gets 79 yards. McAllister, Williams getting a few carries there, but nothing spectacular in that game. Then we have the Patriots backups defeating the New York Jets starters. So Alex Smith probably wants to just dunk his head in a bucket of ice. I could see him being so frustrated with his outcome. Portis had a good game. We will see if the Jets totally rebuild or if they decide to build around their star players. But Patriots with Tony Romo, Stephen Ridley, 2 touchdowns, 123 yards. We see people like Chris Hogan, Lance Kendricks, their first-round pick, but backup tight end. Devon Wiley, who's like a 7th-round, 6th-round pick. Does he have a dev trait? No, he can't have a dev trait. Did he earn a dev trait? Maybe this guy earned a dev trait. Huh. What do you know? Well, he's a very Belichick-esque wide receiver. He had 1 catch and a touchdown. But then Johnny Knox also getting some catches there. But Jets are definitely firing their coach, Todd Haley. You've got one of the most talented teams and can't make the playoffs. Another meaningless game. Hugh Jackson gets the victory over the Chiefs. The Chiefs started Kevin O'Connell over Brandon Weeden, but that didn't matter. We see Trent Richardson, who is probably the AFC Rookie of the Year. He is up against the NFC Rookie of the Year, Josh Gordon. So we'll see which one of those two will get the nod at Rookie of the Year on offense. Austin Collie with 170 yards. I mean, Kevin O'Connell kept him in the game, but it was the Raiders with Bernard Pierce, the rookie, getting 104 yards, no touchdowns. Matt Ryan, 2 touchdowns, 151 yards. Again, this game didn't matter for the playoffs, but the Raiders do show some strength, only going 8-9 this year, a little bit better than they did last year. Then we have the 49ers versus the Vikings. 49ers want to win this game to possibly have a chance of being number 1. However, the Eagles won, so the 49ers don't get to be number 1. But this was a smackdown to the highest degree. We see Breeze playing, getting 1 touchdown, only 74 yards. But it was Foster, 143 yards. Pittman, 89 yards. And then Griffin just having 3 interceptions. I think there were some defensive scores too. Was there? Yes, there was Brent Grimes, I think, had a pick 6. Did they have a return touchdown too? Yeah, okay, they didn't have a kick return touchdown. But, again, this was a game that the 49ers just dismantled the Vikings. The Vikings did have a better season this year than last year because they have the 2nd overall pick, which is why they have RG3. So 7-10 is improvement, but they will watch the Bears and the Packers move on to the playoffs, and not them. Then we've got the Bears and the Packers. Bears fall to the Green Bay Packers, 28-14. Bears in this game were fighting to win, and Jason Campbell is injured and out for 7 weeks, so he's on injured reserve. So next week in the wild card, the Bears and the Packers already clinched the playoff spots, and they will be going against each other in the wild card game. So is this a preview of what's to come? That Mark Sanchez was not able to defeat Matt Stafford in the season game. Can Mark Sanchez have a different result in the wild card than in the regular season? We see Glenn Coffey, Ingram getting 40 apiece and carries. We see Hillman and Starks with 33 and 30. So this is going to be an interesting game. Sanchez, who was the number 2, I believe the number 2 overall pick, and Stafford was the number 1 overall pick in 2009. Now all of a sudden have to go head-to-head again, where Sanchez was benched for Campbell this year. Now Sanchez gets a playoff start, and we'll see if he's able to surprise the Packers or if the Packers will continue their dominance. They do have one of the best defenses in the league, too. Then you have the Panthers and the Jaguars. Jaguars are just awful. And then you have the Panthers, who are trying to stay in the playoffs. They do hold the 7th seed, so winning this game secures a 7th seed. And Joe Flacco throwing 4 touchdowns, 269 yards, defeating the Jaguars is exactly what they needed. McCoy played well, Murray played well, but just didn't play enough. We'll see if the Jaguars decide to go quarterback. They do have Nick Foles. They do have Colt McCoy. I don't think either of them are that good, but we'll see if Ray Horton decides to build around the team a little bit more. When you go 5-12, is the quarterback the answer? We don't know. Or maybe they could take someone like a Mike Glennon. just thinking like Logan Wilson or Landry Jones, and I'm hearing myself say that and just know that that's a very Jacksonville decision and a very bad decision. But they could decide to do that. But as for the Panthers, good for them. They're solidified their playoffs. The Rams versus the Lions, again, a game that did not matter, but Andrew Luck does get the win over his other rookie challenger, Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill actually probably played better than Luck, but with 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, but Luck gets the win. We see Hightower with 84 yards, Luck with 53 rushing yards. Reggie Bush only 62 yards for Detroit. Then we've got the Commanders taking down the Broncos. Commanders also, just like the Giants, in their division trying to make the playoffs, but they needed the Panthers to lose, and the Panthers won, so it doesn't matter anymore. But the Commanders go 9-8, a positive record. Ivory with 2 touchdowns, 71 yards. Vic with 167 and a touchdown. Bradford, who did clinch the playoffs for his Denver Broncos team. I think they're the 5th wild card seed. Does not have a good game. And Denver's not a good team, but they are somehow winning games enough to get to the playoffs, which they will be in the playoffs. But yay, Commanders, 9-8. Then you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against their rival Atlanta Falcons. Falcons were trying to win this game because they possibly could have won the division if they had beaten Tampa Bay here. but they fall short. We see Gabbert with 3 touchdowns and an interception, but 185 yards. And this makes Darren McFadden, and I'll show you in the stats, over 2,000 yards rushing this season. Probably the best rush. It is the best rushing performance of my franchise. No one's even been close to 2,000. McFadden does it in this season with games like this. McGahee, 69, a nice 69 yards. We see 1 touchdown there. Bubba Franks, 91 yards. Although the Falcons lose this game and a bunch of other teams became 9-8, apparently the Falcons still make the playoffs, so Manning lucked out there. Now, with the Miami Dolphins losing, going 8-9 instead of 9-8, the Steelers needed to win this game to make it into the playoffs, and in regular Pittsburgh fashion, I don't know how, as a Browns fan, I don't know how they do it, but they find a way into the playoffs. So 24-13, the Ravens, just terrible performance by Kaepernick, not good. Ray Rice was all right, but it was Ben Roethlisberger, 203 yards, a TD, an interception, 2 TDs by the running back MJD, making it happen. So Pittsburgh's now in the playoffs as the 7th seed. Then we have the meaningless game between the Seahawks and the Cardinals. And the Cardinals outperformed Seattle. Seattle having what was a terrible season under rookie head coach. Pete Carroll. I mean, I guess he's not a rookie head coach. He did coach New England. But first year with the team, Pete Carroll, just having a terrible finish to his season. You have Eli Manning, who's 31. I might even consider replacing him as quarterback because he didn't play well. Or maybe Seattle will go for a quarterback like a Geno Smith, Matt Barkley, E.J. Manuel to challenge Manning, because even though the only thing Manning's got going for him is his name and his overall, which is very good. But when we look at how he played, I could see them moving on from him because it was just a bad performance. Dalton did not play well either, 69 yards. It was a pretty bad game all around, but it's the Cardinals who go 8-9. And then the Browns and the Chargers. This was the battle for the 2nd seed. And they both played for it. And it was a tight game all the way through. It did go to overtime. And the overtime game is completed 27-27 by a kick return touchdown by who else but Devin Hester. So this was a great game, even though Terrell Pryor got hurt, and that scared me a little bit. I got worried. He's my man. He's my Browns turnaround. I mean, he was Rookie of the Year last year on offense. He is trying to do what Newton did last year to take his team to the playoffs and the Super Bowl, and he gets hurt. So Josh Johnson comes in. Plays well. I mean, 156 yards. He did have that turnover. We see Joique Bell getting 152 yards. Hillis got a TD. Bell got a TD. Pryor ran one in. But it wasn't enough because, of course, we had Devin Hester taking the Chargers one step above them to claim the 2nd seed. So we look at the standings. Again, we have underperforming Jets. Bills, I guess, the same they did last year under new head coach Rex Ryan. Dolphins missed the playoffs. We will see here that the Browns win the division and are the 4th seed. Steelers are the 7th seed going up against the Chargers. Then the Texans clinched the division over in the AFC South, the first time in their franchise history ever winning the division. The Colts there, 10-7. Jaguars are not the number 1 overall pick. We'll see right here. It's the Chiefs who gave their first-round pick to Atlanta. So Atlanta will have the first overall pick. Baltimore 2nd. Jaguars, Detroit, Cincinnati. Going back to this list, we see a very tough division in the NFC East. Eagles at top, which basically secures Andy Reid. He's not getting fired this year like he did in real life. He is sticking with it. But we see the Commanders, the Giants, 9-8, good records, missing the playoffs, rough season. Dallas 6-11. I mean, I don't know if Dallas is that bad or if they're just stuck in one of the best divisions in football. We'll see how Dallas bounces back with Shanahan in his 3rd season. Packers will be facing the Bears. This is the 4th and 5th seeds. Vikings 7-10, Detroit 6-11. We know they're bottom 5. Buccaneers number 1, and we see the Falcons and Panthers. So similar record as the NFC East, almost the same results except for the Saints have a 7-win team versus Dallas's 6-win team. But all of the teams in the NFC South, but the Saints are making the playoffs. Tough matchup there because you have the Atlanta Falcons taking on the 49ers, who are the 11-6 team, Super Bowl defending champions. You see the Cardinals and Rams 8-9, they kind of reverse the 9-8, and then Seattle 6-11. As for season leaders, Manning was just shy of 5,000 yards, but good for, that's fine. Brady, who took the last game of the season off, finishes third. Newton second. We see Rodgers and McNabb in the top 5. Touchdown leaders, we do have Manning, who did pass up Brady, largely because Brady rested in week 18. Then McFadden over 2,000 yards, $2,000. Ryan Matthews is second with Portis, C.J. Spiller, and Peterson, top 5 running backs. Chris Johnson falls behind some of them because of his season-ending injury. McFadden, and then we see the finishing up there with the rushing leaders. Calvin Johnson Jr., 1,991 yards. Almost 2,000 receiving yards for Calvin Johnson. And Greg Jennings, almost the same, 1,919. Then 300-yard difference there. You see Ginn and then Julio. A.J. Green slips a little bit. Didn't have as good of a game by 1 yard. We see Steve Smith from the Chargers getting a career revitalization with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. Then we got Michael Huff, Kendricks, Palomalu, Weddle, and Branch as tackle leaders. Derek Morgan, the Washington Commanders pass rusher. I remember when I made this pick, they passed on some really good players in that draft. But I was like, you know what? Washington would need a pass rusher. They're going to take the best defensive player that they think is on the board. And here he is, the sack leader in 2012. So I can say the Commanders did some good GMing on my part, despite the criticisms by Washington fans. Then we got Ray Edwards, Geno Atkins, Puslesny, and Quinn. Yes, I know. In this franchise, I give myself crap over decisions I made and like trying to make it sound like I was a bad GM. But anyway, we see another Commanders player, Antro Roll, an interception leader, Earl Thomas, Sensabaugh, Justin Miller, who's been a shocker this season, very good for Seattle, despite Seattle not being good for him. TJ Ward catching up there with some interceptions. Oddly enough, Aaron Petrie leads the league in field goal attempts. Tucker ties him and has more made. Let's see. Oh, I can't sort anything here. But there is the stats. As for rankings, we see New England and the Eagles are number 1 for their conferences. Offense, we have Patriots, Falcons, Eagles, Dolphins, Chargers, all top 5, all playoff teams. Browns right there at 6. Then we see defensive power rankings. All 5 of these teams, but the Lions, make the playoffs. Bears, Texans, Eagles, 49ers, top 4, and Lions somehow just missed the playoffs, probably because they have a 26th ranked offense. As for the worst teams, we see worst offense being the Rams, the Ravens, the Jaguars, Raiders, Bills. Then the Jets, bad defense for Atlanta, who made the playoffs. Carolina Panthers, who made the playoffs. Saints, and then Cowboys finishing up the worst defensive teams. So I will have a separate video just for the sake of time to keep these shorter. I mean, I know we're closing on 18 minutes here. But we have the playoffs where the Patriots and the Eagles are on a bye week. Then we have the Chargers hosting Pittsburgh. Tampa Bay hosting Carolina. Houston hosting Indianapolis for a division battle in the wild card. You have the 49ers taking on their quarterback of a decade, Peyton Manning, and the Falcons. We have Breeze versus Manning in that challenge. Then we have the Browns taking on Denver. I mean, Cleveland has an interesting history with them. And then we have the Packers and the Bears. So thanks for watching.